pleasure for me as a longtime fan to be sitting here with Aaron Gray.
Here with Larry Hama.
We're talking with Kevin J. Anderson, best-selling author.
Mr. Neil Adams.
I am here with David Fritz.
Axel Alonso, editor.
Shadow Stevens. And Dallas Comic-Con with John Delancey.
With Tom King.
Kevin Conroy.
Free Comic Book Day.
Denise Crosby.
PopCon Pop Expo.
Here on location at Star Wars Celebration.
Sci-Fi Expo, talking for our second time with Gil Gerard.
Wichita, Kansas at Time Eddie.
Producer David Gerald.
I've got Eric Flint.
Are here at Smallville Comic-Con.
Wizard World St. Louis.
VillageCon in Bentonville, Arkansas.
Michael Lombardi.
We were talking with Alan Dean.
Quincy Allen.
Suzanne Lambden.
Founder of Starlog Magazine, Mr. Kerry Oakwood.
Chris Sabi.
Len Weed.
Dave Schwartz.
Mano Inkarami.
Chinese.
Aaron.
This is Sci-Fi for Me, your portal to the science fiction multiverse.
The Immortal Mask, a 1970s superhero crime noir adventure that follows a retired soldier who is given a covenant interview with a death row inmate. What he learns from the interview thrusts him into Atlanta's shadowy underworld. He'll have to utilize his military training to survive from being hunted for the information that could topple the most powerful ruling class in the city. This is not a pre-order or a crowdfunding campaign. Get your books now at denali's.com.
War never changes. When atomic fire consumed the earth, those who survived did so in great underground holes. When they opened, their inhabitants set out across the ruined and dead world to build a new society.
Seconds to curtain, folks.
I don't care if Monday's black, Tuesday, Wednesday, hard to tell, Thursday, never looking back, it's Friday, I'm in love.
Yes, it's another episode of the LCS Guys. I am RJ Carter, your host. With us, we have returning regular Michael Tierney and our still rookie newest member of the squad, and we'd love to have him here. Real fireball of energy, Fergal Patrick Mayo from Michigan.
Hello.
Fergal, how you doing?
I'm living the dream, man. I can't say nothing else, man. It's a dream, and I'm living it. It's your world, and I'm just having a great time in it.
When you love what you do, you never work, you know?
That's the way it is, man. That is the way it is.
I had an invitation today, said, hey, you want to come on our show next week and talk about comics? I'm like, talk about comics? Oh, twist my arm. Come on.
You never do that.
I do that for free. I used to hang around Michael's shop all the time and just say, hey, let's talk about this comic or that comic. And
absolutely. And speaking of comics, I want to show you. I'm looking at this really interesting collection. I gotta do a little sneak peek. Take a look at that. That is an almost. Yeah, that is an almost mint copy of number 76, Tales of Suspense. First, Batroc, the Leaper. So you gotta love that. And for all those who don't know, that was the really cool French guy in probably the best Captain America movie ever, Winter Soldier. I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say the best Marvel movie ever, The Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier was hard to beat.
Get valuable.
It's amazing, isn't it? I'm still learning. You think you know and you don't know. I got a guy talking to me about a House of Mystery #1. I'm blown away that that's even on the market. One of these really unique families in Michigan is actually selling a 1938 Superman Action Comics #1, going up on the Heritage in like 2 weeks, and I think the starting bid on that is into the millions.
Yeah, there's a website called sellingsuperman.com.
This is the same family. It's the Watts family. They have one of the largest, most prestigious collections. Actually, CGC is creating a whole new category for these guys, which is interesting. One of the folks I partner with sometime, they've got a great collection with it, and it's amazing. It's something really cool.
They're selling a Batman #1 in 8.0.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to find.
It's the kind of story where, if you're a comic collector fan, you dream of that happening to you. Now, this was, the guy's father had collected all these, and kind of,
And what was interesting was, as I understand it, the father had autism. This was something that his mother had him develop. And it's interesting because, again, when you think about the heritage collections and some of the unique things that are out there in the comic world, for one to be built this way, where, you're using a special needs and a parent kind of, it's almost reminiscent of the movie of Unbreakable, where, comics help you to come out of whatever place you're in. But in this particular instance, what a great thing, right? It helped him grow this amazing generational gift for his children, grandchildren, legacy built on stories, which you couldn't get better, right? Considering Carnegie and Rockefeller, great legacies, not built on great stories. But, this one is built on a really great story with a great theme to it.
When I started in this business over 40 years ago, there was a lot of reluctance for people to read comics. I mean, teachers thought comics were bad reading. Like there is such a thing.
The devil's book.
So I'd have, customers come in and say, well, I haven't been in for a while. I got bad grades. So my parents took my reading away, maybe played video games. But then I had this one teacher, and she had a student. They were deciding, well, do we need to put him in special education? He just seems to be behind the rest of the class. And then finally the teacher told the mother, said, well, get him reading comics. Just get him reading anything. And he came in, well, comics really is a great tool because it's like what made Einstein a genius. He used both hemispheres at the same time.
That's it. That's what makes any genius a genius, that you can connect those dots. Most people lean right or left hemisphere. It's funny, you guys wouldn't know this about me, but for the last 8 years, I've been a student of neurolinguistic programming. So it's one of the most interesting concepts that came across my desk when I was in DC, and it's just intrigued me ever since, because it is around us at all times. We just don't know it. And so the concept of being able to be aware of it means you're a genius. You can kind of see how that works. And, when people lean one way or the other, there's just a way you can communicate with all of them. I just think reading comics opens up vocabulary. I know it did with my son.
So with comics, you're using your reading side, you're using the visual side, and you're teaching to work in tandem.
That's right.
Before long, this kid, he wasn't going to special ed. They had him going off to the governor's school for gifted and talented. He was smarter than all the other kids. He just couldn't find a way to relate.
That's a big problem with kids today. Again, as a father and having been through the pandemic, which, again, I thought my childhood was something interesting, but watching my son go through what he went through and never imagining he can go through it. Kids are unique. They're not like what we were like. They're not like what you were like. I feel old. I'm almost 49, but I can think back really clearly to when I was a kid, and I'm not, I've had to relearn its entire pathways of how to communicate with my son, how to talk to him, how to get him to share. And comics are just a great great universal. It doesn't matter, even though he's not really as into him as he is now. He's more into the girls and everything else. I just start with the girls and everything else, but he's really smart. But it's into the girls. But I can tell you that we still bond over Marvel movies. We still bond over characters. He still loves to come to the store, and it's just a great unifier. Heroes, man. I mean, who doesn't love a hero?
Yeah. So what happened was they had this thing called the Summer Laureate University for Youth.
Mm-hmm.
And so, every year, a couple of years, they'd rotate the speakers. I was a speaker every year as long as they had that program. And it was so funny because back then, that time, publishers were trying to say, kids don't want comics anymore. And I kept trying to tell them, hey, you try dragging a wagon load of free comics in front of a bunch of kids. It's like piranha feeding.
Yes.
And,
yes. Free comics day proves that.
I learned a lot, too, doing this. It wasn't just so much I was teaching them. I was doing a little learning myself because I remember one year when I first started doing it, it was all boys.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden I go one time, it's all girls.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, what is it you're reading? And that's when the manga thing was starting to come around. And as I learned, okay, well, I need to carry more manga. And, and I was really selling a ton of manga.
Oh, yeah.
And there were times I'd be like the only guy in the store all day, sometimes for a whole day. And then unfortunately the manga said, okay, we're going to give all our stuff to the chains. They'll get them a month before you. They'll sell them less to your cost. And they get to return what they don't sell. And we're just going to stick every comic retailer in America. Every one of us got burned. We all had the same inventory sitting there because it was all dead stock. And, the comic stores lost the manga audience. They told them to go to the chain stores. Yeah. And then, of course, the chain stores killed them on returns and drove a lot of the manga publishers out. So they destroyed themselves. But it was really booming there for a while. Manga was huge sales in the comic books until they started giving preferential arrangements and, unlevel playing field to the chains.
I just want to point out that Mike Walters is in the chat here saying hi. I want to say hi back to him there. He will be kicking off his show in an hour on the mic stand. Every Friday, they do the comic book historical retrospective where we read Golden Age comics out loud and on screen. And tonight, they'll be going over Speed Comics Volume 1.
Oh, wow.
We do the voices and everything. It's a lot of fun. He also points out that there was a TV movie called A Town Torn Apart, in which they had a class who used comics to encourage reading. So if you have not seen that movie, maybe something to put on your list there. Michael Tucker and Jill Eikenberry.
I encourage everybody to volunteer to school and read a comic book. Go as high as 8th grade, read a book. I promise you that it will surprise you, the reaction of the audience. I think you get them up to middle school, even in high school. If you've got a great personality, you can make that happen. So, it's something else when you start talking about heroes. There's a dearth, there's a starving for what we value, these folks, these heroes, and kids they read different, they think different, and it's a learning process.
So I've always been an advocate. We need to make more comics for kids because when I started out, it was all aimed at kids, and they were ignoring the adult market. And then they started making things like The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen. Realized there was an audience for that. Well, then the pendulum swang all the way the other way. Then there was nothing for kids being made. And the public wanted to try to take the stance of, well, kids don't want comics anymore just so they don't have to do it. And it's like, you're ignoring the future growth of our business. I remember I was on this one retailer's only website, and I did a survey, and I said, how old were you when you read your first comic? Came back average age of 8. And I said, guys, this is my point about, how important the youth is to the future of our industry. And one guy goes, I hate how you use facts to make your points.
Inconvenient truth.
And one guy was complaining about he didn't want kids in his store. And I said, well, then he started bragging about he bought the store he started shopping in as a kid. And I'm like, do you not see the contradiction in your own words?
Yeah.
Kids are a lot of work, but they're the future of your business. And that's the work you need to do. Some guys are just lazy. Let's be blunt about it. And
and there's a system I'm going to throw that hairy, audacious goal out there again. My goal is to change a broken system. I was just discussing this with a publisher in the UK this evening. We were the fact that he called it the year of the independence, it's really starting to change. There's a shift in this. I think that, that's why I go back to the COVID thing. I think that, it's shifted society globally to the left. And I think what we're seeing is folks are starving for an experience. And I think that's, the suppliers are slow. I could not say that. It's a $7 billion a year industry with movies coming out mile a minute. And we, the store owners, are the bridge to these stories. Otherwise people will get tired of them. If we don't create the link, they don't get the love in terms of reviews or even understanding what the story's about. So we've got to give them that link. And, you've got to, folks, there's nothing more stronger to me than the imagination of a kid. And what you can do at that age is you can grasp possibility. We can't do that when we're older because life gets us. But when we're young, we can get infinite possibilities. So you can literally be a superhero. And those that don't lose that tend to do amazing things in this world.
And when I was reading comics as a kid, we talk about the loss of all the genres sometimes. There were Western comics, there were spy comics, there were war comics, there were horror comics, science fiction comics, crime noir comics. But you know what? I was 8, 9 years old, and I could read all of them, no problem, because, when people talk kids comics today, they immediately think Casper, Richie Rich, Little Archie.
Yeah.
They were all ages books. I mean, the adults were reading them and loving them just as much as, I was reading them at 4, but,
Yeah. Well, you were one of those unusual gentlemen, RJ. You were one of those folks that was walking around there like 6 months and asking for coffee at about 1.5 years. I already know.
I learned how to read off of them. I learned how to read off the comic books, and nobody knew I could read.
Yeah, that's what's the amazing part about it. That's what comes down to it. That's, for I didn't learn to read off comics, but what I did learn off comics was the concept of being a hero and creating your own hero story and understanding that it can be difficult. It can be hard. It can be really hard, but you can also be a hero. And you can go through the moment and come out of that and do something big and just your possibilities, right? It's the only way that life's worth living. Rather than living in, things that can go wrong, live in what could be and see what happens.
The reason the independents are doing so well right now is because they give us that variety that we used to get back then when you had the Westerns and, the war comics and, and just every type of thing, scuba diver, nurses and, and all sorts of stuff. Women back in the 50s read more comics than men did because they were
They do now. 55% of women skew comics. RJ, am I wrong?
I have no idea about it. I'll ask them all. I'll find out.
I forgot you've got a direct pipeline. The woman hotline. Hello, all women. I'd like to ask a question.
I have no woman, therefore I have nothing blocking me from doing this. Of course, I'll take it on.
The problem with the publishers is they don't have respect for the comic stores. They don't.
No, that's got to change. That has to change, or the industry falls apart. Because what it's doing is it's forcing people to cannibalize each other. It is a gladiatorial pit field that it doesn't have to be. Again, another conversation I was going back to. Comics are the only industry from just a purely business speculative manner where it's considered a micro industry, where there's not enough even to be considered a small industry. It's a micro industry. So for there to be just a micro industry with such a gladiator personality, that's got to change because they'll kill each other.
It's like when you have a hit like The Walking Dead, and it was a big hit on TV. How did they advertise? It said based on the not comic, based on the graphic novel. They directed everybody to the chains again and completely just took a whiz on every comic retailer out there building their brand for them. You've got to have more respect for the retailer.
I listened to the Sirius XM Classic Radio channel, and every once in a while, frequently, they have Vincent Price as the Saint, and he'll go out and he'll solve his crime mystery, and it's a Leslie Charteris character, they'll say, and at the end of every episode, the announcer comes on and says, "Find the Saint comics at your local grocery store." They used to say it. Now, think about advertising as it has been for decades. The Nestle's company, they'll throw out advertising and say, "Hey, Nestle bars are good. They're chocolatey. They're fudgy. Go get one." The Tide company says, "We clean clothes great." The comics company, they're like, "No, the store needs to advertise that." You don't see, IGA saying, "Yeah, we have Hershey bars and Tide. Come on over here."
Oh, no.
Do that for them.
Yes. Well, because they know that they know, they've, like you mentioned a couple things, but I'll go one step further. Coke. I mean, I know enough retailers because of my background. I know I work with enough of them. I've walked in. Coke is one of the, and it's not just them. It's everybody that has a big brand. They'll actually set up their own shelving and display units in the store. They don't even put that in the hands of because they want to take that next step. They're trying to sell their product. So, we're, as I said, it's a micro industry, and change is pervasive and dynamic, but it can happen. And I think we're in the unique position. I'm going to say it. I might be the only voice out there saying it, but I believe this is the only time we're in history where these movie companies, these mega companies need us more than we need them. They're not saying that, but you can look at the numbers. You can look at what Ant-Man Quantumania did. You didn't listen to the people who do the business. You decided to take a little pretty and go creative, and you screwed things up. Even with great performances, you screwed things up. So I mean, at some point, one of the things I'm on the fence about Warner, but one of the things I'll say about James Gunn that I liked was putting up Grant Morrison, because before he brought that out, no one knew who that guy was, except unless you had HBO Max and you watched All-Star Superman. Would you even know who he is? But they're putting not one but two movies that are directly tied to his stories. And that's huge, right? So at least James Gunn, I'm going to reserve judgment, probably get a lot of negative opinions. Sorry, guys, I still love Batman, but I got to reserve judgment. But here's the thing. I'm proud of what he's doing there, because that was Kevin Feige's 1, 2, 3, 4 phases. Now I'm just concerned that because he's losing creative control, he's losing the opportunity to kind of control the narrative and forgetting where it comes from.
Yeah, I wonder if he ever had the creative control, or if it was just some other reason. Because there's so much going on at Warner. I mean, they're like, hey, we're going to consolidate. We're going to do this. Oh, by the way, we're going to license out the Batman cartoon show to Amazon Prime, and not put it on HBO Max, which is their own infrastructure. What gives?
I think I personally, if you, I'm gonna be the lone voice in this, and this is again, let me put the business guy hat on. I think that Zavlov's play here is 18 to 24 months. He's spinning off DC. Because Warner was never wanting to be in the movie business. I don't think this is a commitment. You can't be in this business without being all in it, right? And the properties are worth billions, so they're not just going to let go of certain properties. But I think what he's doing is he's prepping the turn to bring this company out. Somebody's going to come around, but he's got to sweeten the pot a little bit, because there's an industry here, right? So he's laying the groundwork. I think it's not going to completely change off. May happen sooner, may happen later, but I think Warner doesn't have the heart for long. I think Disney is trying to be a slave to all masters right now. And I think they're doing their best they can, but they've got to, this is where the voices have to be louder. This is where the voices are louder in every other industry. Until the stores, which create it all, make it bigger and let people know, be for it, we're gonna miss some marks.
Well, like RJ was saying earlier about when comics used to be in grocery stores and like that. My sales were a lot better when comics were everywhere, 7-Elevens, grocery stores, this and that. Because that was the introduction. They were the guys who got people hooked on the comics. Then when they got serious about it, they came and found me. So I actually did better when I had tons of competition.
Yeah.
But then they made the comics mature. Didn't want to tell anybody they were doing it. People complained, and they got yanked. When a Spawn with child abuse was sold to an heiress at Walmart, every Walmart in the South pulled all the comics from their shelves, and comics got the reputation as being considered obscene.
Yeah.
And, and I was like asking the publishers, why don't you guys advertise this stuff? And they were going back to that old catch-all like you mentioned earlier. Oh, well, that's up to you to do our advertising for us.
That's why I agree so much with RJ on that, because I think that's a critical point. Because at the end of the day, we're putting each other in a Glotoria pit. We're not giving. This is the only industry where retailer has to bear so many more burdens than they do in other places, and it's so small, and it's being abused, and people aren't taking it through, and they don't care if stores fail in 6 months, because another one will come around. Somebody will always buy into the dream, and then as long as they can push their product and put them in debt, they don't have to help them sell. They don't have to figure out what's selling. Boom, you're done. Am I wrong?
No, you're not. There's a website, Comic Shop Locator. I think I've got it right there, where you can find where your comic store is. That shouldn't have to exist. DC Comics on their own website should have a module that does that. Marvel Comics on their own website that does that should have that. And they should be advertising nationwide, not expecting you to advertise to your niche market. Say, come on down to JFK Boulevard and stop in the comic shop. We're across from, the old A&P building. You have nationwide campaigns that talk about your bigger characters, talk about your new cut. Hey, we got issue number 1 of this book is coming out. Find a comic shop at marvelcomics.com. Find your local comic shop at dccomics.com.
And to finish the point I was making is when all of a sudden they want to start selling digital. Okay, they're like, oh, we don't have money. We're just a little $1 billion business. We don't have time to advertise. You got to do that for us. But then they wanted to do digital. All of a sudden they had the money to advertise digital comics now. And what happened is they thought that every comic retailer in America was going to collapse as a chain of power record store with music went digital. But what happened instead was our sales went up because they were advertising their product.
Yeah.
And that just blew their mind. Like, wait a minute, we're trying to wipe you guys out and you're getting stronger instead. But what happened is when they stopped being at the 7-Elevens and the grocery store, people thought, oh, they don't make comics anymore. Then they started seeing advertised like, oh, they do make them. Well, then they send them back. People started going to the comic book stores and hey, I didn't realize Captain America still made. I didn't know Spider-Man was still around. I didn't know Batman still had a comic. And they come in to buy us. But then sadly, they're like, wait a minute, this is too mature for my kid. And then you'd lose them sometimes. So it was a very small percentage that you managed to maintain. But the advertising increased sales, rising tide lifted all boats. And they never did it again.
100%. And that's the problem, again, purely business side, purely, there's a passion to this, but I think when I, again, just going back to, first off, my faith in this hairy, audacious goal that, God's plan is my plan. I'm going to take it. And he's got such big things for me. But beyond that, I talked to this earlier with the publisher. I think if they're never going to let us at the table. They're never going to make a seat for us at the table. So my plan, as crazy as it sounds, is to build my own table. They built the entire country of England when King Arthur, again, going back to my little comic days, when he built his own table, when he made his own knights, right? When he created his own opportunity, he forced everybody to come to his table. So instead of trying to beg for scraps at their table, let's make them understand that there's a table here, and you better start thinking about it.
Well, they used to invite you to the table. You used to go to that retailer summit.
That's it.
What ended up happening was the retailers started telling them things they didn't want to hear. And they started telling the retailers how stupid they were running their businesses. And
that's it. That's the problem. So that's the goal, right? I think that's actually interesting, because if you do an actual think about this and you look around at all of the models that currently exist, and there are some good ones out there. There are big ones, there are huge ones, but there's no nationwide singular model like 2,700 of them in the restaurant business, like 200 of them in the gym business, like 100 of them in the smoke business. I can go on and on and on and on here, but the point being is that there's not exist one nationwide model that someone like myself or anybody sitting listening at home and that's just tired of working for the man and wants to do something big. There's not one model that you can find anywhere that will give you a step-by-step or even buy into a proven concept that you can grow, which is redunculous. It is absolutely just redunculous. You can't make that number up, right? Like, that's just zero. There's regional, but there's nothing national.
That shows you how adversarial the relationship is between the retailers and the publishers. They're not working for us. They're scamming us, conning us, giving us disinformation. They don't even tell us what's going on in the books. A little one-line description that usually when they'll hype something, there isn't nothing there.
Yeah, it's stupid.
Good. They don't want to tell you because they don't want it to get leaked to the press because they want the big explosion on the press, which kills the sales because then we don't have the books.
Yeah.
I mean, adversary is not a hand-in-hand partnership. Back when in the early 90s, when it was booming, it wasn't that way. And like when they were going to kill Superman, they told us. I ordered more copies of that book than I ever ordered of any book ever. I mean, I ordered it in the thousands, and I still sold out by noon.
Yeah,
multiples of that. I mean,
well, they got over greedy. I mean, they got over greedy. I mean, they put so many books out. They literally, one of the things that will always stand down, and all of you guys will agree, I know you will, that when they overshot that market, sort of like what Funko is doing now. When they overshot that market, they literally, it seared a pain of penalty of death. They were on fumes. Literally they were on fumes. That is why Diamond came to be. That's why Diamond came to be, because of that exact experience. That's why it became this mega myth that ended up getting broke out, and now we're all trying to figure it out, and sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't, and it's just all kinds of different things because of that. And that's our issue.
Yeah, well, again, Diamond coming in, I believe, is part of what started to kill the direct market. But I was working for comic shops with Friendly Franks as a distributor. Capital City was a distributor. You had competition.
Yeah, as an independent publisher, back when there was all those different distributors, everybody wanted to carry your new title because they didn't want to be the guy who missed out on the next hot thing.
Mm-hmm.
When it got down to where it was just Diamond, they were like, hey, look, we make most of our money off of Marvel and DC. And all these independents, it's all this work for a tiny bit. They're just not worth our trouble. And they were canceling people who had successful very well performing magazines and comics. They're like, oh, you're not worth our time. You don't get to the levels that we think is worth our time to carry you. And they just shut the door to the marketplace. Well, you can't get to the market, you can't grow a crop. And they were really shrinking the industry. And you really, that was what Marvel and DC wanted. They said, hey, this is our playground. We're putting a lid on the marketplace. We're hammering nails in it to seal it shut if we can. And of course, then along comes Kickstarter, which opens it back up. And now people can get creative again. They're not, having to sell their creations to Marvel and DC for nothing, and then get out there and, reach the marketplace another way around it. So as much as they tried to close it off, well, that just forced people to find another way, and they have.
Yeah.
And that's what Mike's pointing out here is Luke Stone has introduced fundmycomic.com, which is another crowdfunding platform for people who, like Mike Baron, don't want to worry about having to get kicked off of Kickstarter because the crowd comes for him saying, hey, this guy's putting out a racist comic book.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike. I apologize.
What's the latest news on Mike Baron's lawsuit?
He's suing. He has his team has acquired Ron Coleman as their legal defense.
What's the case? What's the case about?
The case is about. Okay.
Wow.
bit of a story here. So Mike Baron has been doing some independent comics. The latest one he's doing called The Private American.
Okay.
It's about a Cuban American soldier out of the service now who saw his friend get killed by fentanyl dealers on the southern border and does the whole Captain America thing. Basically, it's Captain America meets the Punisher in one character. So he's going after these fentanyl dealers. Yeah, and the big wigs, big pharma, and the government are like, no, you can't be going protecting the border like this. It's causing a whole political thing. And he records everything that happens so that when they come after him, that gets broadcast. You see the government fighting against him. So somebody over who has a Daily Kos account, Star Mignon was her name, and she works with Psy Industries, Gabrielle Discordia. They wrote a Daily Kos article that says Mike Baron publishes another racist AF comic, and basically said that he was his hero was shooting migrants and people of color. As like the book's not even out yet. How can you tell him who he's shooting? Went on to say, that it was as racist as his Thin Blue Line, which had police go into a black neighborhood where they had to kill people in a riot, which didn't happen in the book. But it was a call to action thing. Here's the support line at Kickstarter. Here's their here's what you tell them. And enough people got a hold of Kickstarter that Kickstarter dropped the book. So the article gets updated, says, hey, we got a scalp, basically.
Yeah.
And we just found out, hey, he's on Indiegogo and he's on Crowdfunder too. So you know what to do. Here are the numbers. Here are the email addresses. They got him booted from Crowdfunder. Indiegogo started shadow banning him, which means if you had the direct link to his account, you can get to the book. But you can't find it in a search. You can't find it in a Google. You have to know where it's at. And then Indiegogo started doing that to a ton of other books by other creators. So where they got it's not worth us going on to Indiegogo anymore because no one can find us.
Well, this is the draw. This is the draw. It's gone so far in the other direction. I'm all for inclusivity and making things accurate, but you don't know the book, you don't know the story, you don't understand the process. You judge something before you even get a chance to see it. Let the market decide if it's not worth watching. Why do you destroy it before it comes out?
Well, because the person who wrote the article, coincidentally, is also a graphic novel creator on Kickstarter. So now you're a competitor on the same playing field. So there's a lawsuit for defamation and tortious interference being filed against the Daily Kos and against Gabrielle Discordia and probably a few other people. I don't know if Crowdfunder is going to be looped into that or not, but they're not taking it lying down. Mike's got a GoFundMe built to go fight evil and
yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, again, it's just tough, man. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
So that's just downright evil. Like,
it's tough.
Somebody just because, hey, we're going to make up a story that's going to get all these people riled up. Nothing to do with what's going on. Nothing to do with the facts or anything like that. We're going to target this person and try to destroy them. And that's just wrong.
Yeah, it's tough. I think it's tough, and that's part of the reason why, it's interesting that we're veering off into this conversation because, as I told you guys in the green room, one of the things I'm so proud of or excited about doing is being able to put together this thing that I'm working on where we can create a comic book for victims of school shooting. Nothing big, nothing huge, but I mean, we're touching the third rail. Obviously, we're touching another third rail, and we're trying to say, you know, and these are all third rails, you know, and they're not easy solutions, but you know, one person's expression of an easy solution does not necessarily make them evil. We just don't know what we don't know. So that's, you know, and it doesn't matter. Again, it's, you know, we've got to find this place where we're talking to and not at. And I think we're losing, you know, that's part of the reason why we're doing this book, is because I think that's one of the groups that gets left behind in this talking to and not, you know, talking at and not to each other is kids, right? And, you know, we're all talking at each other about all these different things, but, you know, there are hundreds, if not thousands of kids that are, you know, suffering, you know, for lack of a better word, PTSD sometimes, because it gets, you know, they see stuff and it just, they're not talking about it. And that's why, you know, we're doing this.
So are you at the point with that where you have a team, a creative team put together, or is it?
This is at the point where I'm blessed enough to be working with a good buddy of mine, Jim Crowley, who helped come up with this idea. And so we're, you know, what we're doing now is we're taking, again, like everything else that you got to do in this world, this is a very touchy project. So we're talking to folks, we're getting some opinions, really want to build an outline with the help of some psychologists. I've been looking around and scouting out those. I've already got an artist and I've got a writer. I've got a couple artists and a couple writers. I've even got a couple publishers that would love to jump onto this and take this through because they know the value of this. And you know, this to me is just about doing exactly what we've been spending, you know, a good portion of this hour talking about, bringing light to dark, bringing somebody a way to be able to communicate, bringing kids an opportunity to be able to, no different than a service dog, give them an opportunity to express themselves when they can't. And help them to be able to find a way to put words, as I'm doing as a father, just help them put words in their mouth, help them get to that point, because it is not like when we were kids, right? Scrape knees, bang knees, mom holding the seat across when you're driving down the car, smoking out the window, Budweiser in the left hand. It's not like that at all, right? And I almost have a yearning for that day compared to the day we're living in now, because it's bombardment 24/7 with no context. So it's 100 million things that have no ability to hierarchy them in a person's mind. It's horrid.
Yeah, you know, it's like we were talking before the show. You know, the mass shootings is something I've been very familiar with, because I'm actually a survivor of the second mass shooting that happened here in America. The first one is the one that happened in Texas, where the guy climbed up into the university clock tower. The second one was a preacher's son from Oklahoma, Tulsa, drives up to Wichita, gets up to the top of the Ramada Inn, and just opened fires. And I'm driving right through the kill zone, having no idea what's going on around me. And I'm hearing the pop, 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 pop. I'm thinking, man, that is the worst backfiring car I've ever heard. But then I get to work and people are rushing out because they knew I'd driving that way. And they're like, man, you know what? You know, and I was like, I didn't realize that was what was going on. And he shot so many people when I was driving home that night. You know, they were reading the list of the people he shot when I got in my car. They were still reading the list of the people he shot when I got out. Now, I don't think he killed many people, if any, but he's fortunately still in jail. I'm not going to say his name because I'm not going to give him the publicity. This was a copycat thing. You know, so one person do it, another person do it, and that's how these things started. Now, one of the things that's kept them perpetuating, and I've been watching this a lot and always paying attention to it, is I think a lot of this has to do with big pharma now, because with all these antidepressants people are taking, and you'll find a common denominator in a lot of these shootings where they quit taking their antidepressants and then they just went off the rails. That's what happened in the Colorado shooting, a lot of this and that. And so, you know, but it's not being investigated. They're not really looking into that angle of it, and people aren't realizing that that's a trigger. And you know, you got to be aware of the triggers before you can stop them from being pulled.
Yeah.
So what's going to be your approach story wise? I know what the goal is. I know what you're trying to accomplish, but what kind of a story are you going to write?
So what I'm thinking about, you know, and a lot of ideas have been kind of tossing around, but what I'm thinking about is an idea of putting together a couple heroes going through a situation where they don't have the outcome, where they're heroes, where they're expected to have the outcome, and where they don't have necessarily the outcome that they have, and how they communicate with each other through that process, how they talk to each other, because they're supposed to have the power to be able to save everyone. They're supposed to be able to come through it, and they don't. And so what do you do in that scenario? But in a way that helps to, you know, and we're still kind of putting together, there's been a lot of dialogue around different ideas, whether we go younger, older. I think this kind of, to me, says a lot, But to your point earlier, RJ, and I really want to hammer it, you grew up in a time when all genres, and you named a lot, right, were readable by all ages. I think we can do a good story that does speak on this, that speaks to ages. And I think we can capture a pretty decent, good portion of folks through that process. Again, I want to, the hard part of this kind of conversation is dialoguing it, right? I got what's in my heart, and I want to make sure that I'm also thinking about, the proper way not to antagonize, but to create and get in some, good proven medical life, because I'm one of those believers of science.
Yes, I hear you.
So I want to get that in there, but I think that's our approach. I think that's a great, what do you think?
Well, I think that this is the opportunity to hit a lot of people. Now, when comics were the all ages thing and the all genres things, one of the things that they could do was tell an important story and have it stand out. When Green Lantern, Green Arrow, they're traveling all around the country. Oh, they're having, a time here, an adventure there. And when they come home and suddenly Speedy's shooting up heroin, it's like record scratch.
That's
one of the few comics that Comic Code Authority at the time did not approve. Yeah, I mean, that's why it's so valuable a book. But to your point, it tackled the story, and I remember reading that story. I actually remember reading that story. I know the exact comic. I can picture the comic in my head as we're discussing it, because that story is a powerful story. And it evoked, at the very least, because kids read it, it evoked the conversation. Parents weren't afraid to have, they had to have it. And it's when you stopped having them that kids went on their own and figured other places. And that's the world we live in today. Is that if you don't have it with them in any shape, way, or form, and we don't like doing that, they're going to get it 24/7 from the net. They can look for it. They can see videos of it. They're going to get it.
Oh, File 13, you missed an epic run. And this is one of the reasons why, before DC just threw all the cards up in the air and said, let's see if they stack when they land. Speedy used to be working for the government as an adult. He was a DEA agent because he knew where he knew what impact drugs could have on people. He was working with the he wasn't working with the Teen Titans. They rewrote him as Crusader for that PSA.
Yes, they did. But keep in mind, Tony Stark was an alcoholic back in the 50s and 60s. Back in the 60s, I mean, he was known for having a drink in his hand. They tackled that as well. He's many a bout of alcohol. They even touched on it in the movie. They were not afraid of. I think that was a Stanley influence in Iron Man 2.
And you know what? I always point to that because who took over Iron Man for Tony Stark?
Rhodes, Colonel Rhodes.
Who lost their mind about it? Nobody. Because it was like, this is a natural progression of storytelling.
Yeah.
We already know this character. It makes sense for, this change to happen. And Rhodes goes off to Secret Wars. And, one of my favorite scenes there is when, he's got to, contribute some of his technology for Mr. Fantastic to do what he's doing. And he takes the glove off. And Mr. Fantastic's just like, he's like, you ain't going to say nothing about this being a black man under here? He's like, I knew there was a man under there. That's all I cared about.
Yes. Yes. And that to me is another, it's just again, barriers have to be broken. Kids have, and I honestly am at a point where after watching so many countless videos, I get it. We're all hurting. We're all still trying to figure it out. Nobody wants to talk to each other, but running away from these things is not harming us as much as it's killing our kids. Whatever the case may be, Michael, you bring it up with, if we don't bring kids back, I mean, you are so eloquent in that. RJ, I think you've hit every point. We don't bring our kids along and we keep forgetting they're there, and not have these conversations. We're not doing the right thing. We're not living by the word. We're not living by the opportunity to make a difference. And that is just not that, as Forrest Gump will say, that just won't do.
Project coming out that's appropriate for kids now with that my new Sky Dance Winter Fire, which is on Kickstarter right now. If they haven't shadow banned me, and so I've got that going. So I don't know if you've got that where you can pop that up, RJ, or not. And then also too, something else trying to switch over to a little bit more positive note is shipping now is the latest issue of Crossover magazine with my.
That is dope.
Cover features my Wild Stars number 7.
That is actually super dope, man. I'm seriously, that is like super dope. That's dope to another level dope.
So that's the 7th novel of my Wild Stars, and those characters on that one first appeared in a 1977 magazine. That's some characters I've been a long time to tell the rest of that story.
These are your stories again, Mike. I'm still having a hard time realizing I'm sitting with a celebrity.
Well, I don't know that's that's one thing about our industry is it does draw in a lot of people who are on the creative side who want to tell their own stories and this and that. And that was one of the reasons why I kind of got into the industry was to learn the distribution and wholesale side. I'm a journeyman printer. I had years of printing management. I was managing my own printing division at the age of 22. The only thing I didn't know was the retail and the wholesale side. So I thought, one way to figure it out, I'll open up a store. And, I did that for nearly 40 years. And then now, when the pandemic hit, that's when I said, okay, well, I'm going to take the store part and take that to, online and concentrate on my writing, my creative stuff.
File 13, I sent you a whole bunch of garbage that went across messages. I didn't expect it to do that when I cut and paste the link. But if you go to eBay, this is the cover you're looking for. It's 85.
Wow, and an 8 is starting at $375. Again, that's a really good price too. I mean, I'd be jumping on that if I were somebody, because you see the differential in the ask and that. This is a serious cover, right? It's no joke. And actually, it did have the comic, and that because I know they banned a few of them. They've banned a few of them, but that one did have the.
There was a Spider-Man as well. They didn't get banned. They just didn't get the stamp of approval.
Yeah.
And I remember,
wasn't it the Killing Joke that did get banned though? Wasn't it the original print of the Killing Joke that was the first one to truly be because of its depictions of scenes?
That was a direct sale only. That wasn't available on the newsstand. You could only buy it at a comic book store.
Yeah.
Back when they were still both running simultaneously.
Yeah, and wasn't that banned at one point? Wasn't that book banned because of its depictions of violence?
No. Matter of fact, it was a huge seller. It went through like 7 printings in the first year. I mean,
it
sold insane. But you could only get it at a comic book store. You couldn't buy it on a newsstand.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's something else.
There's Speedy right there on the front cover of the book. Green Arrow saying, "My ward Speedy, a junkie," and he's shooting up the heroin. And of course, this was actually a 2-part story. So
yes, it was.
There's the second one with the big needle on the cover. Dealing with the aftermath of all of it.
Yeah. And these are what we weren't afraid to do. This is, again, how we break through and let me bring it back to a positive note, because I know we're coming near to the end.
Yes,
at the end of the day, that's a beautiful, beautiful, I'm going to stop for a second. That's a damn beautiful cover.
That's one of mine. That's my book there.
That is gorgeous. Is all that coloring and that art yours?
Yeah, so I'm a digital artist. And
oh my gosh, man. I'm blown away. I literally am blown away.
So there's the cover right there, Skydance of Winterfire.
2 covers. That's the square bound cover, and that's just a clip from an interior illustration.
Wow.
Then
I mean, just that alone would make me want to read a story like that. Like that drawing alone is like, again, how you're able to do it in the right way. I mean, a picture, there's a saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and there are 1,000 words that can be said, and that's what makes it awesome.
This is a cover restoration I did of a lost pulp from like 1917 that had never been reprinted. And Nathaniel Hawthorne, he got in some trouble with a silver stock on a silver mine that didn't really exist, and he was used as a front guy. And he's like, "Hey, I got swindled like everybody else," but he went to jail and it just kind of ruined his career. And it just was never reprinted until I got together with some other guys. We basically reprinted all of his lost works, and I restored the covers. I also do the colors, or at least I did for the first 100 episodes, all the coloring on Beyond the Farthest Star. I still write it in the letter that, and then that's a story based on a Edgar Rice Burroughs story. And then another thing is this is the cover for the Young Tarzan that I completed a lost Burroughs fragment and finished it out. So I actually co-wrote a Tarzan story with Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Which is, I mean, let's stop. Can we just stop for a quick second, everybody? And let's just take a moment, because that man is not alive. So let's just remind ourselves that, that would be like writing a story with the creator of James Bond, which in and of itself would just be cool to say. And I would love to do that. But, God bless you, man. That is fresh as all kinds of fresh. I'm going to just speak right in. That's amazing. I mean, because again, you think about these stories like the Siegel story, Superman or Batman or Spider-Man, to be able to be a part of these things, you're literally writing into history. And I don't think people understand the power and impact of writing into history. You are getting to connect with a piece of history and writing, and whether you are an artist today writing a Spider-Man story, or Michael like you, whether you are taking Tarzan, which is one of the most beloved books of all time, and creating another story that really was just not ever ended.
Right.
And
yeah,
we're going to have Michael on next Monday for a whole hour talking about this book.
Yeah, there's some more of my art there, and yeah, it's it kind of shows the progress of building an image, and all the different elements that were pulled from a group of shots to create the one I really wanted. And there's kind of like the first page of the story, and this is the paperback cover. And what shows really what inspired the whole thing is I had winter fireflies in my backyard, and they covered a pine tree to look like that. I tried to, capture that image with my camera, with a video camera, and I had to use art to show what it looked like because it was the wildest thing I'd ever seen. And so, it starts out with me telling about a real event that happened, and then while all that was going on, and it was like a summer, we got warm right in the middle of winter, like summer in the middle of winter. And so the fireflies came out, then it got cold again and they freaked them out. And, but during all that I was moving, and these are my Wild Stars comics here. And so, that's where the start for the seventh novel that you just started.
Yeah.
That was where it started out as a comic book series. And so, while we had that little warm spell, I moved an old wood pile in another place, and I disturbed some bugs that were nesting there, and I wondered what happened to them. Well, so I created kind of a fairy tale story. And basically, that's Genghis Khan is a ladybug there. So if Genghis Khan was a ladybug, that's what it would look like. And so I only anthropomorphized the ladybugs, but everything else is just like real animals.
You guys know there's a movie. You just brought something interesting. There's a great movie, Kimbo and the Three Strings. You know what I'm talking about? Kimbo or the Three Strings, you know what I'm talking about? It's a little Japanese cartoon movie where he played the Three Strings. That warrior looks just like the Beetle warrior from that movie right there. And on that movie turn, I just wanted to ask you guys, what do you think about Shazam? Are we gonna get something decent? Because I'm kind of lost, and the movie ain't even out yet. I'm a little bit concerned. I'm not gonna lie.
I want to be a naysayer because I liked the first Shazam movie, but
I did too.
Because of all the shifting going on with Zaslav taking over, with Gunn taking over creative control, the ending of Black Adam means nothing. Henry Cavill showing up, and it's don't get excited about that. Not going to happen. Well, the ending of do you remember the ending of Shazam?
I mean, that was Conquer a Worm. I was literally peeing my pants. I'm not gonna lie. I'm old enough to say I peed my pants. I was peeing my pants because I thought Conquer a Worm was like. I mean, you had this that was such a wildly small character, and they were gonna blow him up. I was like, yes. And then the chair, the Black Adam. I mean, it was exciting.
We have the Daughters of who? What?
I don't even know. I mean, yeah. How am I supposed to hate or love a character? I have no. And I'm a nerd, so I'm supposed to be. I was going through my books, going, okay, who are these girls again? Where are they fitting into the storyline?
This better be a mislead, and they better be a bunch of people under the control of Mr. Mind trying to take out the Marvel family. I better show up.
Well, and see, this is back to the thing. I mean, again, I was so pumped about Quantumania. I'm still pumped about Quantumania because Jonathan Rhys-Majors, personally, you should have given that guy about 30 more minutes of screen time. He would have upped those revenues by double. It wouldn't be behind Eternals on how bad the drop was. But it's just it is getting to me in this sense where you give us this teaser that is absolutely phenomenal, and we get so excited, and then you're like, "What is?" And I'm just kind of like, "What? What is happening here?" So again, the movie's been out long enough. David Cross looked like. Did anybody get the immediate image of Spy Kids, like the movie Spy Kids, with the little man with the hands and the little wide face? Because it certainly wasn't Armin Zola.
Was that? I know that there was a picture of Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
That's it. And they were up against the guy. That literally you could have put those same faces together. And I know they were defending it. Like I said, I'm excited because what they showed with Victor Timely and the Council of Kangs and Ramatut and Mortis and Centurion, all of these things excite me, but God bless America. Shazam is going to be one of those movies I'm going to go to, and I probably need to wait about a week before I post. I'm going to say that now. I'm going to have to take a moment so I don't ruin anybody else's fun and be like, what the?
Yeah. Here's some, I'm going to drop a bomb in the room, and we're all going to have to walk away from it because we're hitting the top of the hour and we have to go. They're going to prominently feature the fact that Pedro is gay. Okay? And in his, superhero identity. let's not forget the fact that these are children.
Yes.
Who can turn into adults.
Yes.
Is it proper to, say, hey, as an adult, they're going to express a sexual preference or identity?
Well, no, because this is a cartoon movie and it's supposed to follow a line, and there was a line in story. I mean, again, let me be very clear. Inclusivity is an important thing, and I love it. Again, I mean, this doesn't wash off in the mirror, folks. So, it doesn't wash off in the shower. It stays with me for 24 hours a day, so I love it.
I love Apollo and Midnighter. Yeah.
But I think, is that a place to play that when there's so much at stake for the story and we're in love with the characters and they're trying to grow as characters? Because I think we've got so much more material to mine. And if this is what I think it is, and I pray it's not, but if it is what I think it is, then they've done a disservice. Gunn's got a lot of making up to do. I think he's already, if you notice, he's already out there sort of apologizing for this movie. I don't know if you've read some articles that actually have them positioned to apologize for the movie already. So something tells me we're going to get something, and I think it's going to be tough, right? And that's going to suck. So I'm hoping that Secret Wars does it, other things do it. Bye, File 13. Adios, muchachos.
So yeah, that's go see Shazam, make up your mind, come back and tell us what you thought of it. We do movie reviews here. We'd love to hear your thoughts, guys. And that's to you two and also to the folks in the chat. It is top of the hour. We want to let everybody get home to their families tonight. So, Fergal, Michael, thank you both so much for coming out tonight. And
I'm just blessed. I'm honestly blessed to be with you guys. You guys are amazing. You guys are pretty. I mean, both of you two gentlemen together should form like a super person. I honestly think there's a super person there. I think it's Wonder Twin Powers type situation.
Love the energy you bring.
Thank you, man. You guys have a great evening, and thank you again.
You too. Everybody in the chat, thank you so much for being here tonight. Come back Monday night when we're going to talk with Michael again about his Kickstarter project. We're going to go through that in depth. Bring your wallets. We want to, make sure that we can raise some funds. That's what it's for. And while you were here tonight, as always, we just hope you had a blast. Good night.